Welcome back to day 3 of Sidebar. I'm Dylan Siegler, SVP of Sustainability here at Green Biz Group, and I am here with a new co-host today, my colleague John Davies. John, welcome to Sidebar.
Welcome everybody, excited to be here. We've had a great couple of days and should have a really good main stage program this afternoon.
We've got the Jazz Mafia playing, getting ready for the Keynote presentation today, and so if you're hearing some exciting jazz happening in the background, that is why. John, it's been a long couple of days. It's been an action-packed Verge. How's your Verge been for you?
You know, it's a little overwhelming with the number of people, especially because of the number of people I know who stop me, and so it's a constant conversation. But I'm excited because a lot of our members for our Green Biz Executive Network are here, so I get to catch up with them in person and not over Zoom and virtually. So that's been great, just hearing what they're focused on, what brought them to Verge, and what we're going to do at Green Biz 24, but I know that's not Verge, so.
You'll have a chance to tune into that live stream in February, but so mark your calendars now for February 12th and 13th. John, we are in the process at Green Biz of expanding our network, the Green Biz Executive Network that you have run for how many years is it?
15 years.
What do you see as the future for GBEN?
So I'm really excited. We had these sort of separate networks that we were trying to build up, and what we've decided is really it should just be a single network. And you know, when we think about that and we think about the purpose of Green Biz, which is to empower business to mitigate and fight climate change, then there has to be more than just the sustainability teams. It needs to be, you know, procurement, it needs to be supply chain, it needs to be design. So, you know, we've folded our circularity network, our transport network, our European network, all under a single GBEN network. And, you know, next year we'll be adding nature once we're done with Bloom here, and Teresa will lead that, and comms in the spring. So we have some big plans for how to embed sustainability across an organization.
This is some super exciting news. This is a great development for Green Biz, and I know it's going to be a great development for our audience. Maybe our live stream audience doesn't know this, but before I joined Green Biz as a staff member, I was a member of the Green Biz Executive Network, and so that was really my entree into this whole community, and it was life-changing for me. It changed the way I approached my career. It changed the way I interacted with the C-suite inside the companies where I worked. It changed the way that I saw the sustainability community as a whole, and the way that I lived and situated myself inside that community, that I now have the privilege of helping to be a center of gravity for. So it was a huge thing for me, and so I'm really excited to see what you can do with it in your expanded capacity leading the big network, the GBEN 2.0. So yeah. Really excited about that.
Very excited.
John, we're here at Verge. What are you excited about on the main stage today?
Well, Rob Bonta, California Attorney General, you know, we're suing the oil companies. I'm kind of excited that he's our Attorney General.
That's pretty awesome. Really looking forward to that conversation. That's going to be happening right after we get off this sidebar stage in just a few seconds here. I am excited to see our old friend Jamie Alexander from Drawdown. She's going to be talking about literally, can we work inside capitalism? So that's a really big question that I think a lot of our audience is grappling with. The other thing we have at the main stage today is the Accelerate Finals. So these are startups that have competed throughout the week, and this is the cream of the crop, and they're going to be looking to win $20,000. So ready for the main stage and Sarah Golden?
I'm ready. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 3 and the final day of the keynotes at Verge 23. I cannot believe we have made it to the end. It all went by so fast. So I first want to say that we've had a couple of changes to the keynote program today. We have swapped a couple of things around, just to let you all know. The Attorney General will be speaking after 2 speakers in the program. And I was going to come out here and deliver a speech and just inspire the hell out of all of you. But then something incredible happened. We have been able to secure the mayor of San Jose to come and welcome us here today. So I'd love to welcome to the stage Mayor Matt Mahan of San Jose.
Jumping right in. This is the policy election. I'm so excited.
And he'll be coming in just one moment. We're at the wait.
There we
Come
go.
on, have a seat.
Thank you.
So first, Mayor Mahan. Should I call you Matt? Mayor Mahan?
Matt works.
Matt, thank you so much for hosting us in your beautiful city.
I am so thrilled to have Verge here again. You guys are amazing. Thank you for the awesome work you're doing to fight climate change and get us on this cleaner, more renewable path. So inspired by you guys, and we are honored to host you here. Thanks for having us.
So much of the action on climate change needs to be location-based. Can you tell me a little bit about the way that San Jose is approaching this?
Yeah, you're right, and cities are on the front lines of this fight. You know, we have done the very place-based of incentivizing charging stations and having building reach codes and really getting down at the neighborhood level, but we're also using our collective purchasing power through, so we have something called San Jose Clean Energy. We aggregate and leverage our 1 million residents and 100,000 plus businesses to collectively use procurement to push the envelope on our renewable mix. We're up to 65% renewable, 95% carbon neutral, and we're explicitly investing at the cutting edge of innovation where generation and storage are coming together in new ways. We really want to push innovation by using our collective purchasing power. And in fact, I'll just add this plug, we were the first big city in the country to pledge to be carbon neutral by 2030.
That's amazing. I also know that something you're passionate about is equity and making sure we're uplifting all communities. Can you tell me a little bit about how you're making sure that everyone is being taken along in this transition?
Yeah, absolutely. We cannot leave folks behind. And so we are working very hard to make sure that when we have net revenue in that energy program, that we are investing it in our traditionally underserved communities, building charging infrastructure there, helping small businesses, which are typically, immigrant-owned small businesses, restaurants and dry cleaners and nail salons, making sure that they can become more energy efficient, which actually helps their bottom line and makes them be more financially sustainable. I was just at a local soup kitchen with the Secretary of Energy yesterday, Secretary Granholm, announcing the federal government, which, by the way, let's be clear, the Biden administration, the federal government has been a huge catalyst for this work. They're investing in helping, yes, that deserves a round of applause. They're investing in helping our nonprofit sector make energy efficient improvements, buy more efficient appliances, and that actually helps them devote more of their spending to addressing their mission. So it's really kind of hitting a double, it's a win-win. It's a double bottom line kind of thing.
I know that San Jose is a bastion for innovation. Part of the reason we have this event here is because of all of the companies that are in Silicon Valley that are really out front in deploying climate technologies and also supporting new climate technology. And I know you have a background in tech as well. So what words of advice do you have or inspiration do you have for these companies to do everything they can to push the envelope and accelerate the transition?
Well, you're definitely in the right place, and not just because local governments like San Jose are so committed to getting to carbon neutrality, but as you say, because of the entrepreneurial spirit here, and I don't know that I need to give the entrepreneurs in the room much advice, but having been one, I would say keep going, be bold, take risks, and don't underestimate the fact that the public sector can be helpful to you. We are always looking to pilot new things. We're exploring incentives. We want to continue to be a platform for innovation. Silicon Valley's history has always been this marriage of public sector support, including investment, alongside the entrepreneurship and bottom-up change that many of you in this room are bringing to the table. So please reach out. We need public and private sector to work together and innovate together. Obviously, we'll need you all to take more of the risk than we will, but we're here to support you and incentivize that innovation. We want it to stay here and grow here in Silicon Valley.
Well, thank you so much for coming here today and for welcoming this audience on the last day of keynotes. We're also planning on being back here in San Jose next year.
We're thrilled that you're going to be back. You guys are awesome and look forward to doing some new and innovative things together next year. I hope you've enjoyed your stay in San Jose.
And as far as I know, this is the first time we've ever had a cold opening on the keynote stage at a GreenBiz event. So I guess there's nothing left to say, but live from San Jose, it's Verge 23. So our first talk for today is coming from Jamie Alexander. Jamie Alexander, she's a climate activist, she's a mom, she's the founding director of Drawdown Labs, and she's also just a sparkling human being. I really love the perspective she has on the role of the private sector in addressing the climate crisis, and so I'm thrilled to welcome her back to the Verge stage. Jamie.
There's a perilous tension building in the world right now. Climate solutions are scaling, but the bad stuff isn't really going away. Will climate solutions overtake our carbon-intensive sectors in time, or will we just end up being additive to the global rise of greenhouse gases? We have a lot to do with that outcome, and we can't let the road to climate hell be paved with our good intentions. Climate solutions cannot be just another reason for more growth, more capitalism. We can have all the climate solutions, products, and technologies in the world, but they won't solve the problem unless and until they displace the industries that are killing us. Now look, I am all for climate solutions. I work for Project Drawdown. My entire organization is built on communicating about climate solutions to the world. We help show the world that reducing our food waste is a climate solution. Eating more plants and less meat is a climate solution, and so are smart thermostats, seaweed cultivation, walkable cities are climate solutions, improved rice production is a climate solution, mass transit, and of course wind, solar, and many others. And there's this sort of unsaid hypothesis in the climate solutions space that when climate solutions ventures start to scale, it means the bad stuff will just sort of go away. Well, guess what? In many sectors, that is just not what's happening. It's like you're having a party at your house, right? And it's getting late, but your friends are still out back, and you're trying to just get everybody to go home. Well, you can't just open the front door and expect that everybody's gonna walk out. You also have to close the back door, which is kind of rude. But in climate solutions, we need to open the front door and close the back door to the things that are no longer working. So here are 3 climate solutions as examples. First, in the transportation sector, we consider carpooling to be a climate solution. But do you think that the existence of ride-sharing companies like Uber, Lyft, and many others have actually contributed to a reduction in greenhouse gases? They haven't. A recent study out of Carnegie Mellon and several others figures that on a per-trip basis, greenhouse gas emissions from an Uber, a Lyft, or another rideshare are on average 20% higher than if you were to simply drive your own car. What about business travel? Do you think that the existence of technologies like Zoom or Microsoft Teams have actually led to a reduction in business travel? It hasn't. Even though virtual meetings have become the norm, they have not displaced business travel. Business travel is right back up to where it was before the pandemic, but now we also have emissions from all that video streaming. What about plant-rich diets as a climate solution? Do you think that the existence of alternative meat companies or plant-based meat companies has actually led to a reduction in beef consumption? It hasn't. So far, studies show that they're actually just additive to the long menu of options that we consumers have at our fingertips. So we now know, because we've run the experiment, that having the climate solutions alone does not solve the problem. Even the wildly successful startups, even the unicorns, by and large, have not displaced the status quo. Now, we need all of these innovations. We need the startups and the big ideas, but what our wheel of climate solutions doesn't show you is what needs to stop. We need more e-bike startups, but we also need less personally owned vehicles. We need more carbon removal technology, but we also need to stop spewing shit into the atmosphere. We need more renewable energy startups, but we need an end to fossil fuels. So the hard truth, So the hard truth is that for entire businesses and industries, that means lights out. These sectors need to make a dramatic, urgent pivot or be phased out entirely. Now you could say, let's let the market sort itself out, right? We don't have time for the market to sort itself out. We can't just wait and hope that climate solutions are going to scale in the world and these technologies will win, because time is the most important variable when it comes to climate change. Take a look at this graphic. This red line shows the greenhouse gas emissions that are churning into our atmosphere up and up. And today we are at that red circle, a turning point where we must dramatically reduce the greenhouse gases that we're putting into the atmosphere. And this yellow circle is where we make this dramatic pivot. From now until 2030, we need to cut our emissions in half. We don't have time to be neutral. Now look, I am not anti-capitalist, at least not on this stage today. I don't think that we can complete a socialist revolution and then solve climate change in the next 6 years. So for at least the next 6 years, I'm going to be the best goddamn operator inside the capitalist system that I can possibly be. I want to exploit. I want to exploit capitalism for every one of its features that can help us stabilize the climate. So how do we use the tools of capitalism to put an end to what is not working and to build the big things that we need to build in the next 6 years? Here are 3 ideas. First, our climate solutions ventures need to be much more tactical. What do I mean by that? Well, our new measure of success needs to not just be about profit, but also about how much our new technologies are displacing its carbon-intensive alternatives. So if I'm Zoom, for example, I have my target over the airline industry. I want to force a reckoning with our unsustainable business travel. So my measure of success, if I'm that company, is not just about profit. It's about how many fewer flights were taken. And if that's my measure of success, then success for me as a business means success for the world. Second, workers should not pay the price for their company's poor decisions. We all know those industries that need to be displaced and put out of business. Well, those workers shouldn't pay the price. So poach their workers, hire up their workers from those sectors that you're out to replace, train them up on the technologies of the future. Those workers deserve to be employed in a sector that's not going to disappear in 10 years, which cannot be true of carbon-intensive sectors. If we're going to have a future on this planet, those industries need to go away and those workers need to be transitioned, and we can help accelerate that shift. And third, get off the sidelines when it comes to policy advocacy. Let's be vocal about our businesses' support for the policies that will make it easier for climate tech businesses to scale and harder for carbon-intensive businesses to scale. Nothing should keep us from taking a side when the stakes are so high and it's so relevant to our businesses. So if I'm a sustainable ag startup, for example, I want it to be much more difficult for a large food conglomerate to continue with their extractive practices, and I'm going to get active on any policy that is going to make that so. And that's just a few ideas. But when we think more tactically, instead of staying on the sidelines, we have the unique ability to infiltrate the system and use every bit of capitalism's power to do the big things that need to get done. Every bit of access, every bit of influence matters. At this late date in the climate crisis, no one person in this room has the right to remain neutral. We need to become the best operators we can within this system to bring into being the future that is still possible, and to leave in the past the industries that cannot be part of that future. It's time to stop being timid and stop acting as though taking a position is only for activists and not for businesses. We all need to be activists now, in the boardroom, in our team meetings, in city councils, on the trading floor, everywhere. We no longer have time to just be for climate solutions. We must also be vehemently and actively against their carbon-intensive alternatives. Thank you.
Tom Chi is an exceedingly impressive person. He's the founder and the managing director of @One Ventures, where his organization is currently working on how humanity can help become net positive to nature. He's also like a musician, he's creative, and I think all of that is super. But why I'm excited to have him here today is because I love the way his brain works, the ways that he sees opportunities, the ways that he sees the way the world could be. I personally believe that if more people saw the world like Tom Chi did, that we would be a lot further along in so many of the goals of humanity. So I'm delighted to welcome him back to the Verge stage. Tom Chi.
Oh yeah, all right, let's do this thing. I'm talking about addressing climate. All right. So as mentioned in the introduction, I run a venture firm where the purpose of the firm is to help humanity become a net positive to nature. So kind of all we do is work on environment and climate. And when I was first thinking about starting a firm, I was like, well, this is perfect, right? Like, because there are some things that we still need to invent. Look, there's a bunch of solutions that we already have to address climate, and we should get on to those that we already have for sure. But there's a lot that are in hard to decarbonize sectors, a lot of things around transportation as well, that we just don't have it totally cracked yet. So my initial thought is like venture, cross climate is going to be amazing. But as I've spent more time in this kind of world, then, because I was in venture a while ago and then got back into it to work on climate, and I didn't realize how, I don't know what's the right phrase, terrible venture had gotten. Because kind of this is what the venture world looks like right now. And if you go and look at the business models behind these, it's almost all this same thing, right? This enterprise SaaS business model, which to me is kind of like a virus that like got into people's brains and made them dumber, both at venture capital and at doing startups. Sorry if that's your business, but it's not the right type of business to address climate. And I say this because I've been around the folks trying to use these types of business models to address climate. And you have them in there like trying to pour stuff at the top of the funnel, just doing all the normal stuff, optimizing LTV, CAC, all these sorts of things. But at the end of the day, how does that ever decarbonize a steel plant? You actually don't pour a bunch of stuff at the top of the funnel. There's a finite and small number of steel plants on the planet. Right? You don't have millions that you can pour in there, just like you can pour millions of users hoping to capture some daily actives and monthly actives. No, it's finite and small. It's the number of coal-fired power plants, finite and small. The places where we make cement, finite and small. So this is just 1,000% the wrong business model, and we see a bunch of companies and entire firms that will only back business models like this to the detriment of actually trying to go work on climate directly. And I mention this because it wasn't always like this, right? If you go back to the very early days, then this is kind of a, of all the photographs that could be, seen as kind of kicking off Silicon Valley, this is as good as any. I guess the other one would be, Hewlett and Packard in their garage in the late 30s. But this is actually from Fairchild Semiconductor, and this is a picture of who came to become known as the Traitorous Eight. And Over toward the right-hand side, you have Kleiner, of Kleiner Perkins fame, who kind of started one of the very first kind of modern venture capital firms and developed a lot of the documents and approaches that became venture capital. And notably, Kleiner was not, just a financier. He had a background in mechanical engineering, he had a background in manufacturing, and basically started investing in companies that helped to put the silicon in Silicon Valley. And in fact, all we did in a venture for the first 25 years was hardware, right? And that basically created, it's the reason why it's called Silicon Valley as opposed to Lines of Code Valley or Enterprise SaaS Valley. It's called Silicon Valley because those are the things that actually have made the biggest mark, right? If you want to think about how impactful, because every one of you guys have something in your pocket right now that only exists because of the work of this early Silicon Valley. But does anybody remember the biggest enterprise SaaS player that started exactly 10 years ago? Right, exactly. That's how impactful those companies are going to be. Like, it's already been 10 years and you still don't remember them. It hasn't even been that long. But everything else, like, you actually have running in your pocket right now. And this is what it looks like to just go straight at the problem, right? There were some things that they were trying to solve about digital computing. Eventually, there was things that they solved around access to internet, and those were largely solved by doing hardware, and we changed what was physically possible in the world. Now, this is all zoomed in on venture, but I know a lot of you guys don't work in venture. So let's talk about the larger question of addressing climate. And the way that we have kind of cordoned off a lot of this larger question of addressing climate is basically the carbon markets and that kind of, and we're also looking at potentially having biodiversity credits and all these sorts of things. And all you got to know for this is that's the landscape. And it doesn't sound actually that much better than the landscape image that I showed you before. And this doesn't look that much better than the enterprise SaaS landscape, right? Like, this is us once again making stuff way too complicated. At the end of the day, it's actually, I only got a couple minutes. I'm just going to jump right to it. Don't do any of this. This is dumb. And also, what? Like the CEO of Vera, the gold standard of this whole thing, resigned in the past year, right? Like, that's kind of, and that was like the most trusted body in the entire thing. Everybody else was less trustworthy. Think about that. The guy who was most trustworthy in the most trustworthy organization resigned because that organization wasn't trustworthy. Whoops. Okay, so we made it too complicated. What would be simpler? Well, we actually have solved this problem multiple times, and not just multiple times, but we've solved it recently. So for those that are old enough to remember this, 1987 was not that long ago, but the Montreal Protocol happened in 1987. And actually, I'll give you not just one, but I'll give you several, right? So Montreal Protocol had to do with recognizing that there was a big hole that was opening up in the ozone, and it was going to threaten basically all of life on Earth if we allowed that hole to keep growing. Sounds kind of familiar, huh? Not only did we succeed in getting rid of CFCs that were largely driving that, in the same time period, this is roughly the same time period that we were phasing out lead from gasoline. This was shortly after we had phased out DDT as a kind of pest control approach, as like broad scale pest control approach. And those are three substances which just don't exist as part of the industrial economy anymore. And we got all three of those done in less than 10 years. Now, Montreal Protocol, oh, and actually the one thing to remember about how we got all this stuff done is they all worked on the same basic idea that polluter pays. There wasn't some credit system where if these people have done something virtuous and these people have done some bad thing, and then there's some third party that goes and validates that this is bad enough and this is good enough and this is tradable, and then there's a market exchange and this person wants to put it on blockchain, take 40% of it, right? So other people are laughing because that was your business model, sorry. But no, it was actually really straightforward, which is if you're still using this, here's how expensive it's going to be for you for every ton that you use, every kilogram that you use. And after a number of years, it'll be this expense, and after a number of years, it'll be that expense. And basically, they had targets for the relative usage of CFCs compared to 1987, and they actually allowed industry was already on a big up ramp. So they allowed industry to kind of finish their peak up at 150, And then they pushed hard, and within 10 years, we had actually wiped out that substance from industrial usage. Now, the uses, carbon pollution is not going to get wiped out in 10 years, but we could actually do a relatively similar approach and just make the timeline 30 years, right? Just give it a longer timeline, but be serious about the penalties. And if you do want to reward people that are restoring things, then you don't create a credit system, because the credit system creates lots of avenues to cheat, basically. You just have a simpler system where polluter pays and sequesterer gets paid, right? And those are just separate. There's no trading that happens. There is no ability for you to, like, what are those Catholic things, like buying indulgences, right? There's no buying of indulgences, right? There's a whole fight about that church or something, I heard. Anyway. So what do we do in our firm? Well, we look at the landscape of emissions, and you actually see the way that we invest is in physical businesses that just directly go after that stuff. And this is how you might look at it if you're in venture. And we basically have we have one software company out of 36. So it gives you a sense of what I think is about the right ratio if you're trying to solve these problems for real. If you are not in venture and you are a big corporation that cares about these same things, don't get mucked up in the credit market. Just focus on insetting. Get really systematic on exactly where the damage, where the emissions are coming from. This is a little bit of a zoom in on IKEA, who's already worked on this quite a bit, and you can see most of their bars are actually quite low. The only one that's still left that is driving the big footprint is materials, and you see, they are continuing to explore how to make the most out of the least amount of materials, as you see that progression from the left to the right. And I'll leave you with one last hopeful thing, because I am out of time. But what does it look like to go directly after the fact that we already have too many emissions in the air? And most of you guys are already familiar. We have over 1 trillion ton excess of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and about 600 billion tons that have been dissolved in the ocean, driving acidity. And these are the places that can store a lot of carbon in a relatively small amount of time. Those are trees, histosols, and soils, basically. And something that is happening in the world right now is a company that we backed some years ago is actually out in Abu Dhabi, and every single day, including today, it says 8 people, but it's really just 4 people, because we're training 4 people. But there's basically 4 people that are restoring 83 hectares of mangrove per day and establishing 100,000 mangroves per day. They plant about 120,000 post-germination survival and survival through adulthood. It comes out to about 100,000 mangrove trees that are being established per day. And think about how direct that is, right? Like, you want something to happen in the world, and you just go straight after it, and then you make it way cheaper, way more effective, way more efficient to just achieve the main thing, as opposed to kind of circulating around, how am I going to crack the code on credits, or how am I going to crack the code on this enterprise SaaS loop? And with that, that's the last point. Thank you so much.
I'm Vartan Badalian, Director of Transportation with GreenBiz. Passenger vehicles, which today account for an estimated 15% of total emissions globally, are going through a once-in-a-lifetime transformation. Much of that transformation is focused on tailpipe emissions. But is that the whole story? That's why my overhyped trend is placing too much emphasis on electrifying vehicles. Electrification is critical to reducing emissions and reaching net zero. Hard stop. EVs are 5 times more efficient than internal combustion engine vehicles, and of course, have no tailpipe emissions, which is great, since 61% of emissions come from the passenger vehicle's tailpipe. And we're seeing massive EV adoption globally. Bloomberg New Energy Finance projects EV sales will rise from 10.5 million in 2022 to almost 27 million in 2026. But reaching net zero in transport won't be possible if the sector overvalues electrification and undervalues life cycle emissions and supply chain decarbonization. That's why my underhyped trend is decarbonizing vehicle manufacturing. A 2023 report found that roughly 39% of passenger vehicle emissions come from the maintenance, vehicle manufacturing, and energy production. Today, supply chain emissions from EVs are approximately 35 to 50 and other materials like steel and aluminum. Even though an EV's total life cycle emissions are lower, compared to an ICE vehicle. It's imperative the automotive industry focus on decarbonizing all parts of the supply chain equally and not just on the vehicle's tailpipe emissions. And thus, not taking aggressive action to reduce life cycle emissions could result in the entire industry spending its carbon budget by 2035. Luckily, the industry is rising to the challenge. Brands like Polestar have ambitious goals for producing a fully climate-neutral vehicle by 2030 without offsets. Volvo has designed its new EX30 EV to be the lowest carbon footprint car by using recycled materials. And Mercedes has announced a new goal to reduce emissions from production by 80% by 2030. Now is the time for all vehicle manufacturers to do the same and for everyone to move faster.
I'm Sherry Totoki, Senior Director of Startup Programs with GreenBiz. When it comes to climate tech startups, my overhyped trend is the use of artificial intelligence to revolutionize climate change solutions. AI undoubtedly holds immense potential, but it is not a silver bullet. Rather, it is a tool that must be wielded responsibly. One example is AI-driven climate modeling. While revolutionary on the surface, its effectiveness hinges on the quality of data it receives. Flawed or biased data could lead to inaccurate outcomes, undermining the very goals these models are meant to achieve. The potential is exciting, but we must temper our expectations and focus on refining data collection methods to ensure AI delivers the impact we desire. This brings me to my underhyped trends: community collaboration. Startups working closely with local organizations and municipalities can lead to highly relevant, localized projects. On-the-ground engagement lies at the heart of effective climate tech collaborations. Communities possess unique knowledge, ensuring that outcomes are tailored to real-world situations, are culturally sensitive, and aligned with actual needs. Moreover, genuine partnerships enhance trust and credibility, enabling true collaboration with residents and governing bodies. This approach also taps into local expertise and resources, leading to innovative and adaptable results that can withstand evolving climate challenges. Ultimately, community engagement amplifies the impact of startup solutions, driving adoption, resilience, and co-creation in the pursuit of a more sustainable future. We should invest more attention in these people-driven initiatives that offer holistic outcomes deeply rooted in real-world contexts.
Please welcome to the stage Chairman and co-founder of GreenBiz, Joel McGower.
So, those of us who live in California have the great good fortune to have a governor, Gavin Newsom, who is arguably the biggest climate advocate and action-oriented politician in the world. Give it up for Governor. And the team he's put together to implement his vision and the amazing policies that are taking place here in the state is extraordinary. I'm so pleased to have two of those members of those team here. Please join me in welcoming to the stage the Secretary of the California State Environmental Protection Agency, Yana Garcia, and State Attorney General, Rob Bonta. Thank you both so much for being here. Secretary Garcia, let's start with you. You have this sprawling, I think, 7,500 person agency with this pretty amazing remit. Just as a sort of a level set, what's in your department?
Sure. Thanks, and thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here. In addition to the Air Resources Board, who I think you all are probably very familiar with, we also do water quality and water rights, so the State Water Resources Control Board. And key priority of mine is certainly securing a safe, clean, and affordable drinking water supply for Californians and for California communities and local economies. We also do toxics, Department of Toxic Substances Control, Department of Pesticide Regulation. The Office of Environmental Health Hazards Assessment helps with all of the scientific and toxicological analyses necessary for our regulatory work. And then we finally have Cal Recycle, handles all non-hazardous waste. So a lot moving in the climate space. I'd say every single one of our activities covers our pathway to carbon neutrality and is a critical component of that.
And one piece of that is environmental justice. You, first of all, had worked for Attorney General Bonta, but you also came out of green earth justice and the NGO world as well. What do you see as possible from your perch in leading a significant state agency the state can do around ensuring environmental justice, particularly as it relates to a lot of the technologies and innovations that are coming online?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I think a true, deep, genuine commitment to transparency and accountability, and true partnership with business and industry, certainly, and with communities, with residents, with those who live and breathe the air and are exposed far too often to known toxics across our state. I've yes, worked for the Attorney General and have very much appreciated his deep commitment to environmental justice and joined the Newsom administration in large part because of a commitment to deliver a California for all and to really deliver on environmental justice outcomes across the state. California leads in so many ways, including in our deep commitment to environmental justice outcomes. We have delivered over 70% of our climate investments portfolio dollars, over $7 billion to disadvantaged and under-resourced communities across the state of California. Thank you. Yeah. And provide a model for the nation. You know, the Biden administration and their commitment to Justice 40 and the IRA and IIJA dollars that are coming down the pike for many of our states, including the state of California, has that commitment to 40% investments in disadvantaged communities as well, and have used a rubric that largely comes from the state of California, from data that comes from us, and from a big push of environmental justice organizations and advocates here in our state to make that happen. So I think the commitment that we've had to equity outcomes, to priority population investments has really provided that model for the nation and the world, and I think we need to keep that going and keep the ambition in that space as well.
And how do you operationalize that in this huge bureaucracy, not just your agency, but the state, because you have to do this in engaging many, if not most, of the agencies. You know, and of course, California is famously the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world. I think it depends on whether Italy's on strike on any given day.
Yeah.
But how do you do that? How do you engage beyond your agency all the players who need to do what needs to be done?
Yeah. Well, I never like to talk about government doing government's job because it's not really that fun to hear about. But a lot of coordination across agencies in the space of enforcement, I think, is critically necessary. Setting a floor, as you all know well, provides consistency and transparency for communities as well as for businesses and industry. And we have to make sure that we're not only looking with our investment dollars to invest in disproportionately burdened communities, but that we're also providing an investment of resources, as in personnel resources, as in careful attention to enforcement and compliance rates, explaining what compliance looks like, really delivering that to communities where if your baseline is non-compliance, you think that that's normal. Yeah. You may not know that non-compliance exists because you think that that's just the way businesses operate, and that's not okay. So there's a big focus on enforcement in our work, as well as predictability and consistency in the development of regulations, outreach and engagement in the same.
Well, Attorney General Bonta, let's talk about enforcement. You famously, a month ago, in the middle of September, sued 5 of the largest, if not the largest, oil companies: ExxonMobil, Shell, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, and BP. I guess a lot of Exxon fans here in the audience, I guess. Talk a little bit about what the end game is there. What do you hope will come out of this? First of all, what did you sue them for? And I think it's a pretty long list, as I recall. Yeah. But what are you hoping will happen?
Well, good evening, or good afternoon, everybody. First, let me just say how much a fan I am of the secretary here. I had the honor to serve with her in my office, and proud that we're close partners and fighting the same fight as we go forward. Our case, which I believe is a game-changing lawsuit against the major fossil fuel companies that you mentioned, is a game-changing case. And it has a set of different causes of action. Chief among them is a public nuisance cause of action, as well as some causes of action around deception and false representations. Another one that's unique to the Attorney General for destruction of natural resources, and then some around the issue of products liability. It's the most broad sweeping set of claims brought by the largest economic entity and largest geographic entity in the United States of America thus far. So, and that entity happens to be our great state of California. So when we move aggressively like this, it can move markets, it can move issues, and so we're excited and grateful for the opportunity to be involved in this way. And one of the major things that seek, two major remedies it seeks. One, stop lying. This is the case about climate change deception. The knowledge of climate change being caused by the fossil fuel industry, as revealed in internal memos and commissioned studies and speeches given to employees since the 60s, and lying about it, recognizing that it's a problem for their economic future and their ability to profit and to pad their profits. And so they had to lie about it. They had to dilute the science. And they have continued to do that even today with greenwashing, the most recent form of that lying. And so we want them to stop lying to the people of California, the people of our country, so that we can make informed decisions about policy and where we go from here. That's number one, stop lying. Number two is create an abatement fund, a fund that will help provide mitigation and prevention and resilience as we address exactly what they forecast and foresaw decades ago: extreme weather, climate change, all the challenges, the wet's getting wetter, the dry's getting drier, superstorms and wildfires and droughts and everything that we're facing. They need to help pay for our ability to deal with those challenges that they've created.
So oil companies will say that we're just meeting demand. What can the state government do around the consumption side? And I'm talking about the business and industrial part, petrochemicals, aviation. We have some of the largest ports, certainly in America. What can the state do, Mr. Attorney General, around dealing with consumption?
You know, we can set markers in the state around goals for emissions reduction, goals around emissions for our vehicles, the movement to electric vehicles and away from combustion engines. And when we say that and we provide certainty to the marketplace, it helps the market adjust around it. And we also need to hold folks accountable when they're violating the law. The law is not a suggestion or a recommendation or an option. It is there to be followed. And when we hold the petrochemical plastics industry accountable, when we hold PFAS companies accountable, when we hold the oil industry accountable, that all creates a level playing field where people are following the law. And we need to be loud and proud about our commitment to climate change. We also, or to climate change action. And we also need to make sure that we bring our workers along. The just transition is very important, providing that pathway so that workers can benefit in the clean energy economy as the planet does and as businesses do.
So the oil companies are just not the beginning. This is not your first rodeo. You've done lots of other actions, but you work in a similar playbook with the plastics, PFAS, as you said. I mean, maybe you're working your way through the alphabet from oil to plastics. And what's the message in all this to business?
The message is that when you violate the law, you'll be held accountable. We want the folks that are deceiving and harming to know that there's a watchdog on the block that sees it and will hold them accountable. We're seeing a common playbook, as you mentioned, where there's early, decades ago knowledge of the damage that PFAS is creating, plastics are creating, fossil fuels are creating. Most recently, Meta is creating for harms to children, and then a deliberate and knowing commitment to sit on that information, to hide it, and to provide counter narratives so that they can thrive. And so we're going to hold them accountable, and they need to know that the California Attorney General, the largest state department of justice in the nation, is watching.
There was a piece in the New York Times a few days ago, a Coral Davenport piece. I'm guessing you saw it. It's titled, Gavin Newsom Wants to Export California's Climate Laws to the World. Talk about, from your perspective, Secretary Garcia, what does that look like? And maybe forget the world, what can we do to the other 49 states and U.S. territories in terms of what California is doing. And how much do we know that they even want that, at least some of the states?
Well, I think everyone knows that currently the governor is in China, spreading the California message in a really great way, I think. And one of the most resounding points I think often gets overlooked in California, although maybe not with this crowd here in Silicon Valley driving innovation, is that many of our air quality gains have actually taken place at a time that's been really good for business. California has struggled with some of the poorest air quality in the nation, and while that's still a challenge for us in terms of attainment in some of our regional basins, we've also made a lot of really impressive strides and improvements in achieving air quality and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. That has not come at a business cost. In fact, that's come at a business gain. And what we've seen, to the point of the Attorney General, in terms of having a transparent floor of something that levels the playing field for all businesses, is that business actually want to strive to do better. And it's incumbent upon us as state regulatory entities and as a state government to leverage that, to harness that energy, and to make sure that we are making strides in economic growth as well as environmental improvements. We wouldn't be where we are today if it weren't for successful partnerships with business. I think we've made a lot of great strides in the area of electric vehicle deployment. We've reached our goals ahead of schedule for both heavy duty and passenger vehicles. But
I'm still want to get, how does this become yet another great California export? What is it? What are you trying to, in terms of the laws, the enforcement that you're doing, Mr. Attorney General, and just this whole, what Coral Davenport wrote, or her headline writers wrote, that he wants to export California's climate laws to the world. How do we do that? Is it simply the power of example? Is it through the power of the microphone that the governor so famously uses well? What do you see doing? Both?
I think it's through both. I think it's through the power of example. I think it's through continuing to drive ambition. I think it's through debunking myths around what it means to achieve environmental compliance, to improve air quality and water quality and the quality of our lands, to reduce the presence of known chemicals. Yeah. I think it also has to do with the filing things like the climate lawsuit and actually calling out deceptive practices and misrepresentation when it's happening. Yeah.
Mr. Attorney General, what do you see as the opportunity here?
No, 1,000%, and I agree with the governor and the secretary about exporting California's climate laws across the nation and the world. If we did so, the nation and the world would all be better for it. And when we go to climate conferences in other states and around the world, we are clearly in California a beacon of light, a beacon of hope. It gives people the belief that we can change, that we can both be responsible from a climate perspective and be successful economically. We're on the verge of becoming the 4th largest economy in the world, as we have simultaneously some of the strongest environmental laws and climate action laws in the world. And we do push our laws to touch more states. We are on our emission standards. We're a model for many other states who have adopted them. We push the federal government to move as fast and as aggressively as we are in some of their in the many rulemaking processes that they have. Where we really want to push President Biden and his administration to do what we're doing. We think we're a model. If you take the blueprint and the playbook of California and you apply it in every state and this nation, we will be better.
Yeah, don't you think that there's a certain amount of, well, that's California? I mean, it reminds me of when Gavin Newsom was the mayor of San Francisco, he used to describe his jurisdiction as 49 square miles surrounded by reality. Don't you think that there's maybe something there that people would say, well, California is its own thing and doesn't apply to us? Or New York, what applies to New York, it may apply to Washington State or a few other largely blue states. How does this become an all-state thing? Either one.
I mean, I think driving consumption patterns cannot be, overstated. I think to your point, we're the straddling between the 4th and 5th largest economy in the world. Again, have shown that an economic imperative can also be coupled with environmental imperatives. I think we're driving innovation in clean energy technology. That could be California exceptionalism, and also could just be our innovation, our drive to innovation. And there are hubs of innovation elsewhere in the world where that level of ambition can also be replicated. And I think that in part, we have some exceptionalism to us, but we should not forget that we've also been one of the largest oil and gas producers historically. And that is something that can be exported as well, that type of transition. Our 2022 scoping plan shows that we need a 90% reduction in oil and gas consumption. That's going to be harder for even us to achieve. So I think we can't underestimate the challenges that we're also facing, to which many other states and jurisdictions can relate, and how the lessons learned from the state of California can be applicable in those other jurisdictions as well for that reason.
That clock is winding down in a horrible way. I wish we had another 20 minutes. But I'm going to ask you both, on January 4th, 2027, when Governor Newsom terms out from his governorship, what's the story each of you hopes that you'll be able to tell? I'll start with you, Attorney General Bonta.
Well, I think the governor will tell, and I hope that I'll be able to tell as well, that we were part of one of the greatest chapters of progress in the history of California, and that we met the moment and rose to the occasion on the biggest challenges that we have, that we led with our values, with the best interests of our people. We followed the facts, evidence, and science when it comes to many challenges, certainly climate, but other things like gun violence and global pandemics and other challenges that we're facing. That we provided the support, protection, and leadership that the people of this state needed in the moment. And that as we did it, as California often does, we inspired other states, our nation, and other nations to do more and to do better. And that we'll have a record of success where our people are thriving, our workers are thriving, our businesses are thriving, our economy is thriving as we take on climate change and as we take on the other challenges that we face. So the governor is ahead of schedule to do all those things. He's an incredible, courageous, visionary leader, and I believe that's what he'll be able to say, and I hope I'll be able to play a small part in that.
Secretary Garcia?
Yeah, I think that's very well said. I mean, I think in the space of business, technology, and innovation, I think that we'd also build out the clean, green future that we want to see. Of course, I'm sitting here with the Chief Law Enforcement Officer for the state, and come from a litigation background myself. We're obviously not afraid of that sort of venue to try out new things, but I think at the end of the day, we want to start building the good. We really want to see a future that creates the type of infrastructure and public good for all Californians that protects folks from the increasingly intense impacts of the climate crisis, economically and in terms of their health and well-being, and that protects our ecosystems and our fragile species. So I'm hoping that we're going to see great strides and improvement in that, and that will leave a long-lasting imprint.
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I think this audience here is rooting for you both to succeed in all this. And on their behalf, I want to thank you, first of all, for being here, but thank you for what you do, for the leadership that you're showing, but also for... but also for demonstrating the power of what good, well-run government can do in the economy, working with business, working for all populations in all corners of the state to bring us to this clean, resilient, sustainable, and just economy. Please join me in thanking Yana Garcia and Rob Bonta. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. Great job.
Please welcome to the stage Senior Manager of Startup Programs, Jake Mitchell.
Hello and welcome to the Accelerate Finals at Verge 23. As you heard from the voice of God, I'm Jake Mitchell, Senior Manager of Startup Programs with GreenBiz. The Accelerate program is one of the primary ways in which we spotlight climate tech entrepreneurs who bring ingenuity and take bold action in scaling companies that confront the climate crisis. Over the last 2 days, we've had 30 incredible entrepreneurs pitch from across our 6 programs, including buildings, carbon, energy, food, transport, and biodiversity. You're about to hear from the winner of each of these categories. Here's how the Accelerate Finals are going to work. Each entrepreneur has just 2.5 minutes each to pitch, after which we'll invite you to cast your vote to determine the winner. I'm thrilled to announce that the winner here on stage today will receive $20,000 in funding from GreenBiz, and second and third will win $10,000. With that, I'm delighted to welcome our 2 esteemed industry experts to the stage. Please join me in welcoming Gabriel Craw, Managing Director and Co-founder at Prelude Ventures, and Shilpi Kumar, Partner at Third Sphere. All right, thank you to both of you for joining us. We'll be inviting Shilpi and Gabriel to contextualize the pitches we hear on stage today. But remember, in the end, it will be up to all of you to determine the winner of Accelerate at Verge 23. So without further ado, let's start with the pitches. First up, we have Tim Sperry, CEO and founder of Carbon Limit.
Thank you. The reason I started Carbon Limit is when I was younger, I lost 2 very close family members as a result of someone else polluting their air. Ever since then, I've wanted to create a solution for air pollution so others didn't suffer the same loss. I'm Tim Sperry, founder of Carbon Limit, where we're solving the world's CO2 pollution problem with one of its biggest contributors, concrete, responsible for 8% of CO2 pollution. It's also the 2nd most used material on the planet, so we figured, why not use it to capture CO2? And that's why we created CaptureCrete. It's an additive that transforms any concrete into a CO2 capturing concrete. How does it work? CaptureCrete is made up of active minerals that, when added to concrete, give it the ability to attract CO2 like a magnet and then mineralize it, permanently storing it into the concrete. And to make the invisible visible, we've taken these 3 samples of concrete, exposed them to the same amount of CO2, and broke them in half, sprayed them with a special dye, and where it shows up pink and purple, like in the control, means little to no CO2 has been captured. Both CaptureCrete shows none, meaning they're fully saturated with CO2. Customer benefits: easily adoptable, lowers the carbon footprint, improves the performance, and generates valuable carbon credits that pays our customers to use it. No third-party CO2 feedstock needed, and no additional equipment to use it. It's a drop-in solution. Business model: we sell it, we license it, and whenever it's used, it generates carbon credits, and we sell those to pay our customers and have everyone win. Current projects, recent projects, we've done Department of Transportation projects, some built environment projects, 3D printing. We currently have licensees here in the US, and many notable achievements, and really excited about the recent DoD grant we got, our 2nd grant, and all attributed to our amazing team of experts in carbon capture, cement, concrete, and an amazing team of scientists. We look to bring the most sustainable solutions to the market, including our next technology, which can reduce electricity by 30%. And give an idea of the impact of CaptureCrete. If you paved a 1-mile road of it with CaptureCrete, it could remove as much CO2 as 250,000 trees in an entire year. Just imagine if we created everything with CO2 absorbing concrete.
Hi, I'm Jocelyn Lai, the CEO of Bedrock Energy. At Bedrock, we are focused on the 10% or more of global carbon emissions that is attributed to the heating and cooling of buildings. Hundreds of billions of square feet of real estate around the world need to take out their fossil fuel burning furnaces and reduce the energy used for heating and cooling. But most of those owners will say, no, it makes my electric bill go up when I do that. Fortunately, for the past almost 100 years, we've known that geothermal heat pumps are the most efficient way to carbon-free heat and cool a building, and are so efficient that you can go all electric and reduce your electricity consumption at the same time. So, why don't we have geothermal heating and cooling in cities around the world and in buildings that we live and work in? It's because for decades there have been some key barriers to adoption. For example, 20 to 30-year payback periods. You might be saving money, but who's going to put up with that? In addition, it sometimes requires for larger buildings acres of space and months to drill and construct these bore fields. In contrast, Bedrock is building and has built what you see in front of you, technologies that can unlock 5-year payback periods or less because of drilling 3 to 5 times faster and providing accuracy that enables optimal energy performance on the other side. As a result, we are enabling 10 to 20% IRRs that make it not only a very feasible way to go carbon-free, but to make money on it at the same time for the real estate owner. In addition, we uniquely are able to drill deep boreholes that enable fewer bores to be built and therefore smaller bore fields that can fit into urban properties. And that expands the serviceable addressable market by 100 billion square feet of dense urban buildings or more. Because of that capability, we are currently drilling a system in downtown Austin where we enabled 8 rather than 28 boreholes, demonstrating our unique capabilities. We're doing this with an amazing team from the top tiers of oil and gas and real estate and big tech, and excited to make geothermal scale around the world. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Aaron Hall, founder CEO of Entropic Materials. The modern world is pretty amazing. It's enabled all of us to be here with this incredible technology, all of the wonderful comforts that we have, and at the same time, the technical achievements and the amazing things that we've done as humans to enable this are wreaking havoc on our planet. We use a tremendous amount of energy, toxic heavy metal catalysts, and numbers of other chemicals and other problematic reagents to make this world happen. Let's just take plastics, for instance. We've produced over 7.6 billion tons of plastic since the 1950s, and over 86% of it has gone to waste that pollutes our land, ocean, air, and our bodies. We have to do better. We need new sets of tools and new platforms to make this work. And thankfully, nature has laid out a solution set for us. The beautiful colors, smells, aromas, the neurotransmitters that let us appreciate them. Nature relies on enzymes to do its chemistry, and it does a dizzyingly beautiful and diverse array of that chemistry. And we can use those for human purposes, but enzymes are fragile. So once you take them out of a cell where they evolved to be, they no longer work. And that's where we come in. At Entropic Materials, our bio-inspired nanoprotectant technology stabilizes enzymes so we can use them for more human purposes. And we're using that to make self-degrading plastics. By embedding the enzymes that break down the plastics directly inside of them, we can enable them to self-degrade without microplastics. And we can hit all of the key value props that are needed around scalability, drop-in usage levels, and accelerate that degradation to be 98% faster. And that can be done in warm water bath or compost. And we're partnering with brands and plastic manufacturers to unlock totally new types of packaging that can self-degrade so that brands no longer have to have their face on waste, and we can expand the types of products that are available to ease the regulatory frustrations and have a better end of life. I have an incredible team. We've scaled, and I have wonderful government and private partners, and we'd love to have you as well. So please reach out if you'd like to pilot or talk further. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Charlotta. I'm co-founder of Blixt from Sweden. So electricity generation and use have undergone a complete transformation, but the big roadblocker is actually our outdated grid infrastructure. It was built and designed over a century ago using mechanical components, and they cannot adapt to peak loads from electric vehicles or renewables. We have the solution to transform this static infrastructure into a real-time dynamic network. We are the first company in the world to convert mechanical switchgear into digital smart devices, allowing the grid or any other electricity consumer to respond to real-time events. And our latest breakthrough in battery technology makes it possible to connect any source with any load, AC or DC, and while we eliminate conversion losses and extend the battery lifetime by up to 80%. Our uniqueness is backed by 48 patents, and the technology can actually be implemented throughout the energy landscape, from residential to industrial and even e-mobility. We have carefully selected 2 key launch markets. One is battery-backed EV charging. We recently signed a contract with Havells, India's largest OEM, and we have interest from Mitsubishi Electric and others to ease the stress from the grid and implement demand response. And secondly, backup power monitoring and control of critical infrastructure, where we engage with Ericsson, Verge, world leaders in telco base stations and data centers. We have sold out the first series and are now ramping up in volume production to meet the increased demand. But the full market potential is worth a massive $500 billion. So we aim to reach at least 100 million revenue in the next 5 years. In our team, we have experts from power electronics, software. Myself, I've been 20 years as an entrepreneur. And not the least, we are currently fundraising. And I'm happy to announce in the round of 5 million that we have a lead investor from Third Derivative on board. So please join us to empower full software control of electricity. Thanks.
Join the seaweed revolution and help fight climate change and ensure food security. My name is Michael Williamson. I'm CEO and co-founder of Cascadia Seaweed. We grow seaweed in the ocean and turn it into regenerative biostimulant for farmers. So what's the problem? Farmers are under incredible pressure from climate change, and regulations are causing them to use less harsh synthetic fertilizers. Consumers are demanding more resilient food systems. The Earth is covered 70% by oceans. Why can't we find a solution there? Well, we can. We build and seed farms in the ocean. We cultivate seaweed, and we turn it into regenerative biostimulants. Biostimulants are a $3 billion market. 1/3 of that is seaweed. We grow our seaweed in the ocean in partnership with First Nations communities in Canada and in southern Alaska. As the seaweed grows, it turns the ocean into a better ecosystem, providing habitat and improving the ocean. Biostimulants applied on land with farmers causes better crop growth, more healthy plants, the requirement for less synthetic fertilizer, more abiotic and biotic stress tolerance. The biostimulant market is growing, and it can be addressed with seaweed-based biostimulants. We have a product in market now, and we're working on developing new products undergoing testing on row crops to increase their efficiency and effectiveness. Seaweed's been around for twice as long as land plants, and therefore it's developed more bioactive compounds, and we can leverage that for our food security. We have many advantages, including a young, solid team of engineers and scientists, our First Nations partners, social license, and an awesome path to market. So I challenge you to join the seaweed revolution and help us grow more food in a resilient system. Thank you.
I'm going to talk about 4 infrastructure challenges in climate and what we can do about it. Transport is going all electric, so we need faster chargers faster. But that's really challenging when, on average, the US grid is 40 years old. The consequences of which is that grid outages cost $150 billion in damages to the US economy each year. And if that wasn't enough, we're also trying to go all renewables. Which poses the question, can we truly have it all? What does our grid of the future look like? We at Electric Fish believe it's possible, and it starts with our 350 squared, a state-of-the-art battery-integrated fast charger backed by 3 US patents. It's rapidly deployable, being able to be integrated in grid-constrained sites in just minutes without trenching. It doesn't require upgrades, saving potentially years of deployment time. It's resilient through its battery storage, being able to provide meaningful backup power for EV charging and for their sites. And it's also powered by software to ensure dynamism and integrating more renewables into the grid mix. We've de-risked our technology with key marquee customers like the National Park Service and IBEW, the nation's largest electrical union, which we're actually expanding into a larger partnership to develop workforce development programs to create high-paying jobs in disadvantaged communities all across America. We are hot off the heels of a manufacturing grant we won from the CEC, $1.7 million, to ramp up production of our next gen system, shipping Q2 of next year. And we've already sized a pipeline of $16 million with fleets on both our buy and lease models. We've done all of this with a very lean and diverse team with expertise from places like BMW and NASA and recognition from Caltech and CNBC, amongst others. We've also run very lean, doing a lot with very little since the beginning 4 years ago. We've only spent less than $2 million, and we're positioning next for our Series A, which we'll be announcing shortly, to complement asset financing that we've secured. Electric Fish is the ideal climate solution from both a mitigation and adaptation standpoint. We are very uniquely positioned by 2028 to build a very robust and distributed network of our assets, which will form a utility of the future, a network of virtual power plant assets to deliver massive impact to communities in the form of miles delivered to EVs, but also the carbon abatement potential, reaching 0.5 gigaton, and also 1.8 gigawatt hours of distributed storage to support grid reliability. We're building the energy future we all deserve and hope you'll join us. Thanks.
Alrighty. What an incredible group of entrepreneurs. Thank you all for being here. Before I turn to Gabriel and Shilpi, it's time for all of you to take out your phones and vote for which startup you believe will have the greatest impact on accelerating our clean economy. So go ahead, take out your phone, open up the event app, Whova, and go to this session, Accelerate at Verge. Once you click on that, you'll see a little button there called Polls, and vote for the startup, your favorite startup today. If someone's having trouble accessing it next to you, please help them out. All right. Shilpi and Gabriel, thank you both so much for being here today. Gabriel, let's start with you. Prelude Ventures invests and supports early stage startups with the greatest potential to mitigate climate change. So of the technologies that you've evaluated recently, which excite you most at this moment, would you say?
Well, first off, thanks for having me here. And I agree. I think that was a fantastic set of presentations. So maybe a quick little round of gratitude for the entrepreneurs who just stood up here on stage. I'm going to answer your question in 2 different buckets. One, like things that we've invested in, and one, that things that we are looking to invest in. Like on the investment side, we're really excited by some of the really recent progress on companies and technologies in the hard-to-abate segments. Hydrogen is making leaps and bounds right now. Steel, decarbonizing steel, which a bunch of people have spoken about on various stages. Cement is a tougher one. We're seeing progress there, but we'd love to see a lot more. Those are some of the things where we've seen long-duration energy storage. Those are some of the things where we've seen a lot of progress already, and we're excited for what the next few years are coming. But some places where we're looking to invest in the next few years, everybody's been reading the press about Canada's fire season. We all live in California, so fire technology is a big place for us. Buildings, really hard to decarbonize, both existing building stock and especially new construction. And then we also are really excited about aviation and how to decarbonize aviation, either alternate modes of how to power flight or just sustainable aviation fuel. And I was excited to see a bunch of those things on the program here.
Fantastic, thank you. Looking all over the map, but really focusing.
We think climate's everywhere. For us,
Yeah.
climate is everything. So yeah, we look everywhere for big, scalable solutions.
Definitely. Thank you, Gabriel. Shilpi, let's turn to you. So third sphere, states that your solutions for the planet often don't look like climate solutions, right? They're just simply better, faster, or cheaper. Tell us what that looks like in practice.
Yeah, third fear is funny. There's a lot of fears driving sustainability and adoption. I mean, I think the motivation that we look at is in a lot of these systems, big, scalable, hard to abate sectors, you're going to have a lot of stakeholders. Some of them might be extremely passionate, are in this room, are decision makers, are driving for like total industry transformation and change. And there's going to be folks that are in that stakeholder map that don't want to change their behaviors, that don't want to have a 20 to 50% markup on a new solution, aren't willing to go through new regulations or compliance considerations. And I think what we're looking for often in this stakeholder map for each sector we look at or each company we look at is if there's someone who's blocking it, like a passionate blocker to change or to clean or to sustainable or to alternatives, that this solution could still get through that decision process. Because selling into these sectors is hard. Industrial adoption and commercial adoption are kind of notoriously difficult, especially when it comes to hardware or integrated systems. And so the companies we've seen the most momentum and the most successful are the ones where they can sort of, against all odds, be able to penetrate a new sector and get scalable adoption.
Fantastic. To follow up on that, what, from the pitches we just saw today, what stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to see these short pitches. I mean, it's nice a little bit to not have to make the decision because, I really think more in like, what are the techno-economics of this? Should this exist compared to alternatives? Like, can I do so I'm trying to like pull my concrete research and my seaweed research, trying to understand how these companies kind of line up against what the actual norms in these sectors are. Something I think about a lot when looking at these pitches is how they compare to capitalization. So can you get financed in this project, in this building project as a geothermal option? Will you get financed the same way? Will you have the same access to debt, where your payback on your loans can people underwrite on the same terms that they're used to? And so that's a little bit of how I'm looking at some of these companies. It's not just the potential impact, it's like how hard is it going to be able to get into that option to be the right solution for the sector.
Definitely. I'd love to dig into that, but we're running out of time. So Gabriel, what struck you the most from the startups we saw?
Well, I think about companies a lot in the same way, Shilpi, that you just said, but I actually took notes while they were presenting so that I could actually think of something to say, and I have nothing negative to say about any of those 5 entrepreneurs. So what I'm going to talk about is the 2 companies that just resonated with me for something that I'm really excited about. One, Carbon Limit, going after concrete and cement. That is a huge problem. It's really hard. It's really big. It's a tough business to win in. And so I really was excited to hear that pitch and that entrepreneur. And then also Bedrock Energy. I love geothermal. I love drilling. I love hard problems. And like taking that from like out in the wild somewhere to some residential apartment or city block, that seems really exciting to me as well. So maybe it's the first 2. Maybe I was just, suffering from the first 2 bias or whatever that's properly called. But those were the 2 that I really resonated.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Shilpi, I'm going to put you on the spot.
I have to pick one?
Yeah. Which startup would you vote for today and why?
Yeah, I'd say the one that I want to dig into more is Electric Fish. I think we met 4 years ago, and so I've seen how hard something can be to come up with this meets all 4 infrastructure challenges and see them grow the solution, have something that's ready to scale, be able to get the grants to be able to really scale up manufacturing and make sure it's a solution that's an option for so many EV charging infrastructure systems that really don't have storage, integration, the same capability and the economics that justify it. So I think Electric Fish will win my vote today.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for your feedback and for your votes. Before we reveal the results today, I'd like to first announce our People's Choice Award winner, Winlift, who received over 22,000 votes on our feature story, the 35 climate tech startups to watch on greenbiz.com. So congrats to Winlift. They, As the winner of People's Choice, they received a guaranteed spot in Accelerate and a shout out on this stage and our socials. So congrats again. Now, I want to highlight that being on this stage, being a competitor in Accelerate really matters. Let's take a look at the progress of EIP Technologies from when they won on this stage back in 2015.
Hi, I'm Brad Burkle, CEO of EIP Technologies. EIP systems bring the benefits of the grid to remote communities and industrial facilities in the form of constant regulated 480-volt power generated safely from local wind and sun with integrated fast-charging chemical-free storage and transformer-free power flow. EIP systems will operate during extreme weather events or fires at the smallest carbon footprint you will find anywhere. We pitched out and won the Accelerate competition in 2015. At that time, as two founders, had just filed initial patents, put about $30K to the company, and we're working out of a garage. Today, we've grown to a team of 7. We've built 5 machines. We've had 12 patents. We put about $900,000 into the company and are working out of a much roomier 11,000 square foot facility. We've just placed a production EIP system on our lab rooftop, and we're talking with prospective customers about initial deployments. We're also looking soon to raise $4 million to support our future growth. For us, the main benefit of Accelerate was access to all the relationships that helped us qualify use cases and develop our partner ecosystem more quickly. To you presenters, I wish you all success in today's competition.
Huge congrats to Brad and the EIP team. So awesome to see their recent success since being on the stage. Okay, everyone, we have the results. The winner of Accelerate at Verge 23 is, drumroll please, Carbon Limit. Congratulations to Carbon Limit. Serious congratulations to all the startups who pitched today and to Gabriel and Shilpi for sharing the stage. Back to you, Sarah.
It is hard to believe that we are almost at the end of the Keynote program. I want to thank everybody for sharing your time and your passions and your thoughts this week. It's truly been a treat for me to have so many inspiring conversations. I hope you all have had great connections, and I encourage you to keep those conversations going. GreenBiz has a peer network that you should take a look at if you're interested in continuing to collaborate with other people. I also want to thank the GreenBiz team for making this event look seamless. There's so much work that goes into an event this size, so thank you so much. And I also want to give a thank to the Jazz Mafia, who've been joining us on the main stage all week. Once again, I would love to call out to our sponsors who really understand that in order to forward climate action, it takes collaboration. I'd love to give a special shout out to our foundational sponsors, Deloitte and Hitachi and NextEra. And I also would love to just note how many amazing community partners we have, convening partners that have been creating content, that have been promoting this event, that have been bringing their communities, and our sustainability partners who have been doing things like making sure your travel is net zero, who are taking plastic out of the environment for every attendee here, who are offsetting our electricity use, and are also ensuring that this is a zero waste event. So, As noted, we're just about to have our final conversation. I want to also note that we're going a little bit long today, but I promise you it is worth it for this last conversation. And after this, we'll have one more session, and it's going to be unlike other sessions. This is going to be an interactive session focused around making sense of what's happened during the 3 days that we are here, so I hope you enjoy that. We have tried a lot of new things this year, and I would love feedback on that as well. So please take the survey. We do read all of our survey results. We do respond to that. Case in point, you may have noted that today's program started at 9:30. That's because we heard from all of you that a 9 a.m. start time was not okay after the after dark party. So that's the type of people's choice things that we pay attention to. Please let us know how it goes. And with that, I am delighted to welcome our final panel of Verge 23 on the main stage, led by my friend and colleague, Sherry Totoki, Senior Director of Startup Programming.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Sherry Totoki, Senior Director of Startup Programs with GreenBiz.
That's it.
Good to see everyone for this final conversation on our keynotes. You got comfy?
Yeah, I thought we had a little soft landing.
For our cushions, yeah.
All right. Well, we're really excited for this conversation. We've heard a lot this week about how we're at this inflection point where the decisions we make today will really be affecting the speed and scale of our transition to a cleaner economy. So I'm really excited for this conversation today to be talking about how we can collaborate and accelerate new climate technologies. Mike, you're the former CTO of Meta, now launch your own nonprofit Carbon to Sea initiative, as well as Gigascale Capital, VC firm. Sophie, you yourself are a startup founder and also launched the wildly successful CTVC platform, as well as your own VC firm as well, Planeteer Capital. So let's get right to it.
Okay.
Scaling new climate technologies is hard, right? It can take a lot of stakeholders, partnerships, funders. Can you talk about how you think about implementing new climate technologies and especially the collaboration needed to scale it? Mike, why don't we start with you?
Yeah. I mean, I think the first myth I want to bust is we can't build things quickly. So, in 2011, I commissioned our first data center at Meta. 10 years later, we had 28 buildings in 18 locations all over the world. So this was much more than a 10x scale in less than 10 years. And that's because it was like mission critical for us. It was imperative for the business. And so I think that's the key to these collaborations is they have to be win-win, right? It can't be on good faith. It has to be, as a business owner, I want to do this because this is good for me. And as a startup or others, they want to do it because it's good for them. I think I can give lots of examples, but one specifically in the climate space is obviously the Frontier Advanced Market Commitment. Now, Meta and Alphabet and others, came together, said $1 billion in pre-purchasing of carbon removals. That has spurned an entire industry of companies now that can out there and say, I have customers for my product. Now, what's in it for the companies? In any new technological revolution, I saw this in mobile, I saw this in web, I saw this in AI. What happens is, as soon as everyone's caught on to this change is happening, there is several usually massive shortages in key technologies and key supplies. So outside of climate in the AI world, if you start a company, good luck buying GPUs. They're back ordered for a long time, are going to pay through the nose to get them. All the people who are ahead of the game have them, and so they've got a multi-year head start. When you talk about the advanced market commitment and Frontier, if you're a big company now and want to do verified carbon removals, you're going to have to wait 5 years.
Right.
All the suppliers are sold out thanks to Frontier. Now you're in the back of the line or you're going to pay through the nose. So the real reason for an enterprise to partner is so that they get early access to the technologies and then can take advantage of it faster than their competitors do.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. Sophie?
Mike said it well in terms of getting all of this steel actually in the ground, the accelerants to get us there. I'd say anecdotally, from our vantage point, tracking all of the deal activity that's been happening over the past 4-ish years or so at this point with CTVC, we're going from a couple bullet points on a blog, right, of the deals that were individually getting done back in, let's call it kind of early, mid-2020s, through to now. Folks are scrolling pages and pages and pages, right, just to go through these early, mid, kind of somewhat late-stage venture and private equity funding that's happening in climate. And we could write a whole adjacent newsletter with similar number of bullets of these corporate partnerships and important deployments that, frankly, we wish we had the space to be writing about as well. And we'll share some more about that, I think, later on in this panel.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you are, your investors, you're always thinking about the risks and opportunities of any given investment. How should, the corporations that are in the room, how should they be thinking about risks and opportunities when piloting any of these new technologies when they're able to? Sophie?
Good question. I think if there's one thing that I'd like folks to take away, of course, coming from the much kind of early stage, pre-seed and seed stage vantage point that we like to spend a lot of time at Planeteer, it's if you're a corporate in the room, there are ample partners of startups out there that are looking for you and that want to meet with you. These solutions exist today in a way that maybe they didn't not so long ago, and it's some of the best and brightest in the world that are frankly quitting their job or coming out of the lab and really taking that leap to put this science and technology and business models into action. They want to meet with you, and there's a whole robust ecosystem that has been there for a long time, but has particularly accelerated over the past, let's call it kind of 5-6 years, to help mature these businesses to a point where they really are ready to start talking that revenue language and dive into some of these partnerships together. So I'd say it's different this time, right? We've been kind of beating on this drum for some time. This isn't Clean Tech 1.0 days. These businesses are here. They're robust. Of course, the cream will rise to the top here, and there's still some serious diligence and some thoughts around who's going to be with us for a long period of time. But the founders are out there, and they want to meet with you. So that's why I get energized coming to events like this, right, where we've got that neat mixing and mingling of some of the buyers and some of the solution-oriented folks, such that this isn't just a transition versus disruption debate. We can kind of find that messy middle and do that together.
Right. Yeah. Mike, anything to add?
No, I mean, I think Sophie nailed it. There is the facilities to support these companies, from growth equity to infrastructure financing to DOE loans. And I'll tell you the difference between a company that's like, we've got this great idea, we hope it works, and I've got an LOI, I've got a partnership with a major manufacturer, I got an offtake agreement. If we build it, they will buy it at this price, we will both make money. You've now got a ton of investors who are going to be fighting to get into that company because that's going to grow. And again, these businesses, this is the other difference of Clean Tech 1.0 is we've got this technological scale now that we didn't have before, that the pitch is like, when we get to scale, we're cheaper than your existing solution. Like, we are better, cheaper, and that's why you're going to go with us. So you're really just trying to get through that beginning phase where it's like, okay, maybe at pilot scale you're not there's some technical risk and others, but once we get to a commercial scale plant, I now have an advantage over my competitors because I got in on this technology and I now have access to it in a way that others don't. So I think that's the key this time around.
Yeah. So do you want to add anything about the capital stack? I know that Mike kind of touched on that. You talk about that a lot.
Even if you hadn't asked, I was going to jump in with that anyway. So yeah, these words that we love so much, the climate capital stack. I don't know if, I feel like I joke I need a tattoo or something that says the climate capital stack. I say this so frequently, and I'm glad some of you are picking up on this with us. But the point being that y'all aren't alone. Whether you're the startups that are innovating, the corporates that are purchasing, the funders that are funding, there's many, many layers to this complex ecosystem of folks that are specifically structured to underwrite and to take off some of those risks at certain points in that innovation to deployment maturation scale. And so we've talked about a couple of these players already, venture funders, right, the corporate off-takers, but we're missing 20 different slices of this cake kind of in between, be that non-dilutive funding, catalytic capital, grants, some of these off-take agreements, right? We're talking about some of that venture debt, lots of things that we've heard about through other conversations earlier today and other days here. But point being, it's a language that sometimes differs percentage by percentage across these different tranches. And my observation is that the more that we can learn each other's language, we realize the more similarities that we actually have between these stages that don't need to be so much of a leap to kind of cross the cavern of. The main language that works for everybody is just revenue. And as Mike was saying, when these pilots come out and a founder can go back to the investors that they're trying to raise equity capital from or some of those venture debt providers, and we can talk about real tangible things like LOIs or even better, some realized kind of pilot revenue, the game changes, and dramatically, and in a way that really shapes the fate of lots of these founders. I'd say bringing it back to the data, and we're tracking all of these funding rounds that are happening, and we all know that we're in a little bit of a, or not a little bit, we're in a real kind of macro slump at the moment, particularly for these founders that are raising equity capital at the Series B stage or beyond. That's fallen off a cliff. I don't need to be the one to tell all of you that are kind of feeling that yourselves. It's the deals that get through are the ones where they have a pilot or some kind of partnership with these corporates, and also ideally have some version of a partnership with government entities, be that all the way through to the LPO or something kind of much earlier maturation stage. So those two things are really core unlocks for these businesses. And I know some of you have the keys to the kingdom for those founders out there, and I just want you to know what an important position that you're in for the fate of some of these companies.
Yeah, and speaking about that, the successful ones that are getting through, can you talk a little bit about, successful corporate startup partnerships that you've seen, as well as maybe some that haven't been as successful, or maybe some lessons learned? Mike, do you want to speak about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're early on in this, but you've seen a bunch of important announcements. Microsoft doing a power purchase agreement with Helion, which is a fusion provider by 2028. You've got Dow Chemical, announcing that they're going to do an SMR plant somewhere in the Gulf Coast, small modular reactor to co-site with one of their chemical plants. That's a huge deal for all of these providers, and that's the sort of highest risk start of the segment. You have plenty of other things happening in green chemicals, in battery storage, and others where the people are doing these agreements and getting them done. I'd like to hear what Sophie has to add.
I mean, you're giving us a chance to kind of talk some of our own book here, so maybe I'll do this anonymously, but think of this, really early stage company that's able to directly measure the emissions that are happening in a commercial and industrial heating and cooling setting, make automated adjustments to what's going on, and often those natural gas-powered boiler systems save so much money from those energy cost savings that then the building managers look amazing and want to reinvest that capital into going even further in reducing those direct emissions. So it's kind of a win-win, but it's all based on that sticky piece, which is saving the money and kind of creating that pocket of capital in order to go one step further and to really deepen these partnerships. This is a company that's about a year old or so, and it's working with some of the Fortune 100 banks and biggest REITs in New York City already, and it just frankly makes everybody look really good. So it's not so much the stage or the age of the company at this point, so much as finding these early partnerships and kind of co-creating together, I'd say.
Yeah, much of the deals we do, this is a deal we did together, are so early, so a lot of their deals aren't out, so we can't actually talk about them in detail. But I'll give an example that talks about a trend that I think is really important. So there's a company we funded called Dioxycle, and they have an electrochemical cell that produces ethylene. It's a $200 billion commodity market. They're getting a lot of traction with customers, and one of the reasons why is they are able to basically be profitable at a 30x smaller scale. So they have a technology advantage that happened and work out of Stanford and allows you to build a much smaller plant, a much smaller facility, piece by piece, Lego bricks like we did the web infrastructure, and allow you to take a lot less risk because you're not building these mega projects hoping it all pencils when it actually is done. You can build something small, see that it works, start getting profit, and go from there. So they are sort of overwhelmed with interest for that. And we're seeing this similarly in a lot of these things where how quick is your time to value, in buildings, in chemicals, in others, and when you can provide these small solutions, small in terms of total capital outlay, that get profitable very quickly, demand is outstripping supply.
Yep. Which may be kind of riffing off, this isn't all glass half full, even though maybe that's how we sometimes like to think about it, but for some of these examples where the partnerships haven't worked out, or are recently, particularly in a non-zero interest rate phenomenon type of environment, not currently penciling, those tend to be these massive upfront capital outlays, and I don't need to tell you guys what some of those are. You're reading the news and you're seeing them yourselves, right? This is where we're maybe reliant on many, many years of subsidy or at least zero interest phenomenon kind of conditions in order for the economics to pencil. Mike and I get excited about some of these businesses, or frankly, about businesses, period, that you don't have to squint to kind of look at the economics.
Yeah, makes sense. So as we're wrapping up Verge and our final kind of keynote conversation here, we think about when we meet back here in a year, what would you like to see in this community? What would you like to see prioritized?
I'd be excited to talk names about the company that we just described and some other specifics.
I'll tell you what, rather than us talking about this, I want you to have a panel full of people in the audience here describing all the awesome pilots they're doing with these amazing startups building great technologies and how that's going to transform their businesses, how their CFOs are happy with them, because like this pencils in the long run. And that's really the game we have to get into to make this scale.
Well said. Deepen, widen the sophisticated capital stack, and a large part of that comes from corporates and from these partnerships. You're here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you both so much for joining me today.
Thanks for sticking with us, folks. I know we're right down to the bitter end, so thank you very much.
Please join me in thanking Sophie and Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. That's a wrap of the main stage of Verge 23. There's one more session, and we'll see you next year.
America has an undeniable, unstoppable energy. You can see it in the way we run our homes, workplaces, and communities. At Constellation, our energy matches yours. We're generating electricity 24/7 with hydro, wind, solar, and the nation's largest carbon-free nuclear fleet. Enough clean energy to power 15 million homes today, and a commitment to helping you build a brighter tomorrow. Power on, America.
America knows that a sustainable future is only possible if we make real progress now. At Constellation, we've already begun. We are the nation's #1 producer of clean, carbon-free energy, generating nearly 90% carbon-free power today. And we're committed to producing 100% carbon-free electricity by 2040. Together, we're creating a brighter tomorrow today. Power on, America.
We started taking end-of-life electronic in the 80s, and then we evolved with that, and today we are processing around 100,000 tons of recycling each and every year.
Welcome back. Well, it's the end of the main stage for Verge. What'd you think, Dylan?
That was an incredible program. All 3 days were absolutely exceptional. I have to say, Tom Chi really knocked it out of the park. I loved his talk. I loved his provocative take on where we need to go in terms of decarbonization and what offsets can and can't do.
Yeah, and the Accelerate pitches were also really phenomenal. I mean, very hard to figure out which one to vote for. They all had scale opportunities and great impact, so that was a lot of fun too.
Did your choice end up winning?
My choice did end up winning.
Love it.
Yeah.
That's so maybe if this whole peer networks thing doesn't work out, you can go become a venture capitalist.
Ooh, I'm not sure. No one wants me handling their limited partnerships. I don't think so, no.
I also thought that Jamie Alexander did a great job. I was looking forward to her talk, and I thought she absolutely delivered. I have a lot of the concerns that she brought up around the fact that we're proliferating these great climate tech solutions and all kinds of programs that are designed to decarbonize, but we're not actually winding down fossil fuels and not actually winding down the things we need to do differently fast enough. So her analogy of having this party where everyone's still partying in your backyard and you kind of just want everyone to leave at the end of the night, I thought was really apt.
Yeah, and as a lifelong capitalist, you know, I agree with her. Business for the power of good, right?
Yep. So. Well, we've got some great interviews coming up, and we'll be right back.
Thanks.
Hey, Oscar.
Scram!
Are you gonna eat that?
Yeah, it's called a garbage can, not a garbage can't.
Yep, garbage can do a lot. There's even waste that can be turned into sustainable
aviation fuel, an alternative to normal jet fuel that can help fly a plane with reduced life cycle emissions.
Sounds like baloney to me.
Together, we can help get more people passionate about trash and build towards a future where everyone flies with SAF.
Oh, looks like garbage. I love it. Yeah.
The purpose, the mission, the objective behind EDPI North America is, of course, to put more and more megawatts of renewable energy into the ground. And that means we are replacing fossil fuels. That means we are generating more and more clean energy and supplying clean energy to millions of homes in the US and all over North America.
With the right tools, managing your carbon footprint is. Sustain Life allows you to confidently measure emissions, get insights, and align reports to regulations and client requirements. Book a demo today at sustain.life.
We are back at the sidebar. I'm Dylan and I'm here with John. We are really delighted to have with us Mahesh Ramanujam. He is the president and CEO of the Global Network for Zero. Mahesh, you've had a distinguished career in the field of the built environment for many years, and you were head of the US GBC for a long time. Can you tell us about this latest chapter at the Global Network for Zero? What's it all about?
The journey at US GBC was fantastic because we were able to take lead from 35 countries to 200 countries. Now, that's transformation in the new building sector, but when you look at the existing buildings, the challenge was how to get started on existing buildings and really helping them to get to net zero. Particularly even within US, we have almost 100,000 buildings. And if you want to make all those buildings get to net zero, that's going to take a lot of effort. And it's going to take a different approach than what we have done with new buildings. So this journey is about getting every building on a net zero roadmap and then use that to actually influence businesses, processes, products, services, and whatnot. So I'm going beyond the building sector, but obviously starting with the building sector.
So your organization offers net zero certification for existing buildings. So why is this important?
I believe the key issue here is that 97% of the building sector is existing buildings, and buildings of different timeline is available there. Buildings as old as 1900s to all the way to the building that was commissioned yesterday is an existing building. So when you think of those buildings, all of these buildings, even the best built green building, needs to have a net zero roadmap if we truly want to reduce all the emissions from the building sector. That's number one. Number two is that you are not going to get there to our 2050 Paris Agreement targets if you don't build the building sector along. So I think the key focus that I'm trying to define here is net zero should be our foundational metric. It's the bare minimum we should all hit if we don't hit everything else. So let's get started with net zero. That's the premise in which we have started the Global Network for Zero.
That's exciting. Yeah, so we heard during yesterday's keynote from our Director of Buildings, James Ball, that the built environment in general and building technologies suffers from underhype. It's just, it hasn't ever really grabbed people's attention in the way that some other technologies have and some other decarbonization techniques have. Why do you think this is? Why does it take us so much to get to where we need to be in terms of getting the built environment right?
I think the primary reason to me is that not enough good news is being shared. While serving at USGBC, I always said building a bad building is a sin, but not talking about a good building is a cardinal sin. So we don't talk enough about return on investment. We don't show true case studies in a coherent, consistent way. And most importantly, how technology, a specific technology, has helped to actually move the needle to either achieve your energy efficiency goal or your net zero goal, or for that matter, your indoor air quality goal. That information is very scattered and it's all over the place. So the more we can harmonize and present it in a consistent, simplistic manner, I think we can get people's attention, because real estate sector gets one thing right, just making money. So if we can show them how to do that right, they will do it. They'll do it faster and smarter.
So what's the role for corporations? How can they help influence the real estate sector?
I think regardless of which company we are talking about, a small business or a large business, they have a real estate to operate from, even in the post-COVID world. So if they could start thinking about their buildings and see that as an opportunity and as a critical, integral element of their net zero strategy or even their ESG strategy, I think that's the best way to get started. And then the most important part is that don't start with the big step, but start with the most smallest step. If you can take incremental steps to really drive transformation by asking the right questions, saying, what is the efficiency of my building? What environmental parameters influence or don't influence the building? And how do we get smarter about learning about our building asset? I think that would be a good starting point. And what I have seen based on my USGBC's 15 years of experience is that when people get started, they generally tend to maintain momentum and they do better things. So it's always about getting them started. And that means we have to do a lot of education and follow it with good implementation and a lot of celebration.
We've got only a couple of seconds left. Mahesh, what keeps you passionate about this space?
I think the most important thing is while working at USGBC, what I realized is the transformation of a building has nothing to do with the building. It's about the people inside those buildings, the people around those buildings. Particularly after COVID, the millions and millions of people who were affected by those buildings really remind us that we can do better for our fellow human beings.
So
That's
exciting.
all I care about.
So exciting. We've been with Mahesh Ramanujam of the Global Network for Zero. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Wells Fargo has donated $50 million for emerging clean tech startups and $19.5 million towards projects and communities transitioning to a more sustainable future. Doing gets it done. Wells Fargo, the bank of doing.
We're answering the big questions, like how can we make the most of our energy and resources? We're open, we're real people, and passionate about doing what's right.
You've had those thoughts that transportation can't go green, that Scope 3 emissions are out of your control, that one person can't impact sustainability, but you can. Introducing Clean Mile by Breakthrough. Start using movement-level transportation data to make sustainability progress and reduce Scope 3 emissions. No more doubts. Take control of your sustainability goals with Clean Mile.
Sustainable innovation. Delivering technology to our customers to increase productivity per acre while minimizing ag's environmental footprint and increasing global food security. At Corteva, we've assembled some of the world's brightest minds to discover, develop, and deliver the next generation of sustainable crop protection and seed solutions. We're reimagining the global food production system, solving some of our greatest global challenges today and accelerating solutions for tomorrow, for generations to come.
Welcome back. We're now here with John Mennel, Global Digital Assets Leader for Sustainability at Deloitte. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
So, wow, that's a title.
It sure
so,
is.
So what does it mean?
What does
Global
it
Digital Assets Leader for Sustainability, and what is that practice?
In general, it means I do all things technology for our sustainability practice. So the analytical models we build, data, alliances with technology companies, those are all the kinds of things I focus on.
We're hearing a lot about AI and the big impacts that AI is going to have on sustainability.
Yeah.
How are you seeing generative AI actually currently looping into sustainability workflows?
Yeah, the way it's showing up right now already, and we have 25 AI use cases or Gen AI use cases that we put together that we're implementing now with clients, is that it's just making it much quicker and therefore much cheaper to synthesize and analyze information. And so that shows up in reporting readiness, it shows up in supply chain, it shows up in highly targeted customer marketing offers. And we've, in some of our own products, we're actually recognized by Gartner for implementing Gen AI in our Green Space Tech product, which is a climate hard tech navigator. It helps companies identify what technologies are not ready today, but they'll need to be able to hit their goals. And we've basically cut the time that we can get analytical reports out of that engine from a couple of weeks down to less than a day,
And so
based on Gen AI.
Excuse me. And so you're using you're using data that you're actually generating in the background, so you don't have that problem that we hear about around the data not being great feeding into AI.
Well, but the other use case for Gen AI is great for cleaning data, right? Because we are able to run data that we know is not clean through a large language model. We know what expectations we have, and after multiple iterations through that, we can clean data. And that, as you know, is the biggest problem for large companies in sustainability is they don't have clean data, and therefore they can't get to good conclusions, and Gen AI is making that a lot faster. And when I talk about reporting and supply chain transformation for sustainability, it's largely about getting better data.
So you work with some of the biggest brands and well-known companies, and so with the sustainability teams, what are they asking you about? What are the trends that you've seen that companies are looking for help with?
Yeah, I think one of the things that has really changed even in the past year is we've almost completely gotten beyond the why and we're at the how. And so whereas a year or two ago we were doing business cases, we were working on target setting, those kinds of things. For the vast majority of our clients, that's already done. And what we're working on now is what to do, when to do it, how to make it economically viable for the company, and more importantly, how to make it a competitive advantage, right? Because climate change is an enormous problem, but it's also an enormous opportunity for business. And businesses who really think about how to differentiate based on the transition we're going through are going to be the winners over the next couple of decades.
Shifting gears a bit to policy,
yep.
I'd love to ask you about the new California regulations, SB 253. Yep. What is this going to mean for companies doing business in California?
So at the simplest is it's going to require companies doing business in California to disclose their carbon footprint, and then also to disclose the risks to their business from climate change. And what's interesting is it's actually very similar to a set of EU regulations which require something similar. As you know, those two sets of regulations, if you look at it, California is the 5th largest economy in the world. The EU, as I'm not sure, but also a very large economy in the world. That basically means that every large company in the world, every large company in the US will need to do those two things. Disclose their footprint, disclose their risks from climate change. And what that means is when they disclose it, it needs to be at the same quality as all the financial data, which means all the technology, the controls, the reporting, the auditing that goes into getting the financial data right is also going to have to go into climate data because it's going to be reviewed by shareholders and everyone else. It's a big, important change.
It's fascinating, and it's really helpful to get your perspective, seeing the behind the scenes from so many brands. We've been with John Mennel, Global Digital Assets Leader for Sustainability at Deloitte. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
The Family Forest Carbon Program and this groundbreaking methodology make it easier for landowners to unlock the potential of their land to fight climate change in a transparent, measurable, and meaningful way. To learn more about the program, visit familyforestcarbon.org.
Everything we know, everything we love, might well be at risk. The time for action is now. Together, we can be champions for the Earth.
Clients need to know where to look. Calyx Global's trusted ratings and insights help you navigate the carbon market with confidence. Learn more at calyxglobal.com.
Hey, we're back at Sidebar. We have Sonali Figueres here with us from Green Queen Media. You run an impact media platform and you advocate for social and environmental good. Tell us about Green Queen Media and what you do.
Absolutely. So we're the first and largest sustainability media out of Asia. We started over a decade ago. We've evolved into being the main food and climate media. So the real impact of what we're trying to do is to advance food in the climate conversation from Asia to the world. Our readership is now global, actually 50% in the US, which is exactly where we wanted it to go because we want to help change the conversation and make it more diverse around food systems. As you know, Asia is where the majority of our population growth is going to come from, and the majority of our food production needs and increase in protein demand is going to come from. So it's incredibly important for the Asian voice and Asian startups and Asian innovation to have a voice at the future food table. At the same time, it's just still food on the climate landscape is still not important enough. That's been covered throughout Verge's event. It's getting better. But you know, it's only the first COP coming up with 2 days on food. Last year was only 1 day. We're still really getting to terms with the fact that food is 1/3 of all global emissions. And so my job is every day as the editor, I'm helping curate the content as to what will be the most impactful to really advance that food and climate conversation.
So what does success look like for you as a social impact entrepreneur?
Well, I'm in the media business, so for me, it really is about audience engagement and audience growth. It's a little tricky to have a media based in English in Asia and then trying to go global, so I navigate kind of the difficulties of that. Success would be, you know, our newsletter read by, 500,000 people, because what I'm really trying to do, our audience tends to be people who have power in their jobs. Either they are execs and corporate professionals, or they are investors, or they are founders, or we have a lot of also researchers and policymakers. So for me, as long as I'm providing well-written, thoughtful, fact-checked information that can help people make decisions in the food and climate space, that's successful to me. So when people come to me and say, my idea got funded, or I rethought about how we're looking at this policy because of an article, or this inspired me to kind of change my career and go into food and climate, that's the kind of success that I'm looking for, that impact.
That sounds very similar to some of the success factors that we have at GreenBiz Group.
There are parallels, for sure.
So you're based in Hong Kong. Can you tell us, how does the landscape in Asia for a media company differ from other parts of the world, from the US or Europe? How does it compare?
That's a really great question. It is actually quite different. Asia straddles two types of media. You have the local media in each kind of region and country, which is in its own language, which I am not really as much part of because I'm in English language media. And then you have the English language media, which tends to be more international and kind of echoes some of the more mainstream European and US media themes. I would say the media overall, especially around climate and sustainability and business, is maybe less polarized, less politicized, certainly at the English level. That's different on a local language level. However, there are other complications. We have fewer truth in advertising laws, so there's a lot of kind of gray areas over sponsored content versus editorial. There are certain places where investigative journalism is difficult to conduct because of the political system. So it's a mix of both less polarized but also sometimes more vanilla.
And how do you navigate that?
It's been an interesting challenge for us because, as you may know, Hong Kong recently had the passing of what we call the national security law that came from the Hong Kong administration via China, and that is very clear that we have to be more careful in what we report on. What I tend to cover around food and climate doesn't tend to be as impacted, but I do have to be careful about certain subjects around, ethical labor and manufacturing and things that I was maybe covering before and not. So far, climate reporting has not been affected, but in other parts of Asia, the climate story is having issues. For example, in Vietnam, climate activists are being arrested. And so that has my concern is that within 5 to 10 years, will climate become a story that Asian economies fight against because it's there's a tension between the growth they want to see and the degrowth needed for climate?
This is fascinating stuff, and I wish we had more time to talk with Sonali Figueres of Green Queen Media about this. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us at the Sidebar.
Thank you so much.
Hassle-free, affordable, and sustainable waste and recycling management. Every business knows they need it, but constantly dealing with unreliable service, unexpected fees, and unpredictable rate hikes, that's a mess you don't need. And that's exactly why Roadrunner has become the new standard in waste and recycling. We provide fully managed waste and recycling services enhanced by cutting-edge technology. First, we'll consolidate management of your waste operations, whether it's in one location or across your entire portfolio. And we'll leverage our trusted network of over 3,000 haulers and vendors to deliver dependable services nationwide. Next, we'll leverage our proprietary technology suite to monitor, collect accurate data, and analyze every aspect of your waste operations. The result? Better service, simplified, flexible billing, and landfill diversion opportunities that make sense for your business. And we'll do all this and more for less than you're paying for waste management and recycling services today. Let us accelerate your road toward affordable, reliable, and sustainable waste and recycling. Roadrunner. Modern waste and recycling.
Data is the currency of the climate-smart economy. In agriculture, that data begins with the farmer. At Food, that's where we begin too, by applying advanced data intelligence to understand how farmers think, feel, and undertake change.
Welcome back. We're here with Catherine Atkin, Director of Carbon Accountable. Welcome, Catherine.
Great to be here today. Thank you.
So you and Carbon Accountable, I have to actually read this, help make the California Climate Corporate Data Accountability Act. That's a lot of,
yeah, it's a
words
mouthful.
There. But we can just call it SB 253. You made that, help make that a reality. So tell us what's involved in that, and how did you help make that happen?
Well, thank you so much. It's great to be here today. It's been super exciting to kind of see people like myself, sort of a enabling environment catalyst, come together with the private sector to think about how to really, make our impact much bigger than it has been. And I think the little part that I got the chance to work on was to develop the bill idea to make California the first in the nation requirement for mandatory full scope reporting for the largest U.S. companies. So really for me as an attorney and a person who looked at the environment, the climate data policy landscape, I saw that we were really missing the sort of mandatory full scope disclosure that was going to give us that carbon data we needed to really unlock the climate economy, to scale up the deployment of climate solutions. So had the opportunity to just do what you do in a democracy, which is come up with an idea and take it to a legislator and then work for the last 3 years with a great coalition of other actors to make something like this happen in California, because there were a lot of supporters and there was also a lot of entrenched interests that didn't want to see this happen. So it was a privilege.
That's amazing. And you mentioned that data could have the power to unlock this whole other element of our economy. How do you think about the link between disclosure of emissions and risks and action on emissions and risks?
Yes. Well, I think that we've already seen it. I mean, when you have mandatory disclosure and you've got to really show your data, it creates this kind of reckoning inside companies. Like, what are we really going to be about? What are we saying we're doing? And I think right now we're really in danger of losing a lot of the public because of this, sort of lack of transparency and sort of a sense that the corporate sector isn't doing what they're saying they're doing, even those that are good actors. So I think now it's time for everybody to sort of submit themselves to the same rules And to, when you see the data, I mean, come on, 90% of most companies' emissions are scope 3. When they have to disclose that, there's going to be a lot of thought about that supply chain, that's where all that insetting and that decarbonization needs to happen. I also am excited to see the private finance world and climate tech really realize that without that enabling environment, we're not going to deploy these solutions. So those companies that maybe took a pass on you initially with that great idea, I think are going to be much more willing to sit down and think about, well, we're going to start having to show the supply chain and how do we create some quick wins and then continue to see some declines.
So it seems like forever ago that the SEC was going to have rules like this. So what do you think the influence of SB 253 is going to be? I mean, will there be some influence on whatever the SEC finally comes out with?
I mean, I'm of course a big supporter of a strong federal voice on this. This was always a both-and strategy. And I think that I'm hopeful that the SEC will come out with a strong rule. We know that the political winds it's difficult right now, and so I wish them the best. But I also think it's time for all of us to take responsibility for the part we can play. And California has such a long history, low carbon fuel standards, cap and trade. When others haven't been able to act, even if they would like to, California has been able to sort of set the standard and then support the full-scale adoption of this. And the fact that it's all U.S. companies, billion-dollar companies, means that we're going to be getting a national reach with this.
In about the 45-ish seconds we have left, what is next for Carbon Accountable now that SB 253 is law?
It has been amazing to just have this opportunity also to see a lot more people thinking about policy. I've loved to see, I'm sort of the missing middle between innovation and government is that sort of like everybody getting a little uncomfortable, rolling up their sleeves and recognizing that we don't get this done unless we actually are all in together. So I'd love to see, more of a brokering and consistent work around policy. There's a lot of other blockers that we need to address. And so for me, that's kind of the next, sort of turn of this wheel.
I cannot wait to see what you do. We've been with Catherine Atkin, the Director of Carbon Accountable. And thank you so much, Catherine.
Thank you.
Energy is transformative. It brings your business to life. And the energy ecosystem is evolving. At Train, we transform the way you engage with energy.
Hitachi works to support everyone who cares about the planet. Like Mr. Rossi, who wants to use ticketless transportation that's both convenient and low in emissions.
Prenderò questa strada.
And Ms. Cheng, who can invest in green projects through a digital platform that accurately assesses environmental impact.
I want to support.
The choices we make can change the future. Hitachi is creating a better society through digital and green technologies.
We are back at the sidebar for our final minute and a half in this spotlight. John, it's been a great run. I'm so glad you were able to co-host with me today.
Yeah, and now it's time for a nap, right?
That is definitely what I'm going to do. It's for those who are watching from home or from the office or from a coffee shop, next year, come and join us at Verge in person, because I have to tell you that the programming is absolutely unparalleled. The breakouts are a great way to gain insights and learn more of the stuff that you need for your job. However, what I want to say is that our parties are next to none. So I think a lot of us are kind of dragging ourselves around today because that party was maybe a little bit too good.
Yeah, and the other thing you missed, though, like I remember last year having this impression, is to go into an exhibit hall with all of these solutions and everything that, it's bigger than our audience here. It's just phenomenal. So, and the education in those breakouts that you mentioned, just, people are just constantly scribbling because there's so much good information coming out of there.
Yeah, it's a little bit like drinking from a fire hose, to use an overused analogy, but I think taking all of that back to your desk and using it to inform others in your company, using it to inform others in your life, it's just an incredible opportunity to learn from your peers and to learn from experts in this space. So I was a consumer of Verge for years and years before I joined the GreenBiz staff. So it's been a really awesome run this week, as it is every year, and certainly next year will bring us more of the same.
Yeah, we look forward to you coming back next year, whether it's virtually again or whether you're able to make it to San Jose and join us and the other 5,000 plus people who were here.
And we'll be co-located with Bloom again next year. So we've got Verge and Bloom happening here at the San Jose Convention Center. That'll be in late October of 2024. So, John, what are you going to do with your freedom once Verge has closed finally this afternoon?
So I'm going north and going mushroom foraging with some of the people who were at Bloom this week.
You're living the sustainable dream. All right. Well, with that, it has been an honor to be your host here at Sidebar. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.